This is the disclaimer for Wildlife Control Consultant and Pest Geek Podcast for the Living the Wildlife podcast. Always follow national, state, provincial, and local laws when using pesticides and/or other control methods to manage pests. Wildlife Control Consultant, LLC, Pest Geek Podcast, Living the Wildlife Podcast, Stephen M. Vantassel, or their or his affiliates are not responsible for followers' use of the information provided here. Hi everyone, Stephen Vantassel here, bringing you another episode of Living the Wildlife as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. I'm glad to have you on board. I hope you had a great week. Here we are. I'm recording here during the holiday season, and so hope you're doing well. Give a few moments here. I'd love to have you subscribe to our channel. Just click the bell and, of course, click the subscribe button. Make sure you visit back every week. I publish a video every single week, provided that my colleague gets it put up. But nevertheless, it is available. You can also, I also publish my videos up on Rumble. So you can look at Wildlife Control Consultant at Rumble, and you can certainly get my videos there as well. We'd love to have you join us on our Facebook page as part of the Pest Geek Podcast family. Again, it's an opportunity for you to learn more and engage with other professionals within the industry. And if you're new to this particular channel, we're really glad to have you with us. And my job here is I talk about vertebrate issues. So my colleague deals with other areas, but I just deal with vertebrate issues and, of course, some small business topics as well. So love to hear of your comments, suggestions for new shows. Perhaps if you'd like to be interviewed, you have a new product or business you'd like the spotlight and the pest on our Living the Wildlife, well, you can certainly reach out to me at Wildlife Control Consultant at gmail.com, Wildlife Control Consultant at gmail.com, and we'd love to engage and discuss with you. Well, kind of keeping with the theme that I've been started last week in terms of 10 things that you should be doing at the end of the year. Thought we'd do this theme and continue that along in terms of 10 best things, and so here for 2021. And I kind of went through and found some websites that I thought were useful. Some I have certainly used more frequently than others. Others I was just doing a quick search and like, yeah, I think this might be somewhat useful. Even found a site that I typically don't use. I might have visited it some time ago, but it sort of give you some ideas. And this is going to be an evolving type project. I'm hoping to maybe revisit this on a year-to-year basis and probably provide some new resources or update the resources. Just to let you know that these 10 are not necessarily in order of priority. I just had to kind of pick 10, and there's actually more than 10 in this particular list, but think of it more topically or some issues related. So why don't I get started on that? The first one I would like to highlight here is the wildlife damage management class source here. Let me pause for a moment here. I just want to make sure that I'm got this settled, that I got this settled properly. So this is the particular site I'm referring to, of course, and this is where we want to have you visit. Notice this is called the Internet Center for Wildlife Damage Management. Those of you who know me, I used to work at this particular university back, several years ago, probably more like 7 years ago. And part of my job was managing the Internet Center for Wildlife Damage Management. Well, the University of Nebraska has basically disbanded all that. However, when I was there, I took the opportunity to get a lot of what's called gray literature scanned and posted on our Digital Commons site, which is part of the university library. Now, the difference what gray literature is, of course, you have different qualities of publications. For example, you have what's called peer-reviewed journals. These are high-end journals, typically written by academics and researchers. And before they get published, the article is put through a rigorous review process called peer review. The next step down are items called peer edited. So that's kind of the gray literature. Sometimes the editing is quite minor. It's just to make sure you're not having someone say, I saw green Martians, help me trap, or something wackadoo. But it's still a lot of valuable information, but the research quality may not be the same. You may have a lot more anecdotal information, but in our industry, that's sometimes all we have because we don't have the finances to support a lot of the heavy-duty, really high-level research that's done in other areas like insects, which is one of the reasons why I tell people, don't get into wildlife, get into bugs and weeds, because there's plenty of money. But I digress. Anyways, a lot of this material is written by people who have had sometimes years of experience within a particular field. Sometimes they're just putting out some observations and they're publishing it. And it was often hard to get this material because you had to go to the conference in order to access it. And of course, these were limited publications. So what I did was I collected a lot of this material and had the university scan this material, and we then had it uploaded into the digital commons. Now, what I want you to look carefully here, maybe I can kind of blow this up a little bit more, is look at some of the terms here, some of the categories or the collections within this section known as the Internet Center for Wildlife Damage Management as part of the Digital Commons library. So what this is the Digital Commons is an area where the library provides materials that are open to the public without cost. One section within the Digital Commons is called the Internet Center for Wildlife Damage Management. Underneath that section is all of these other collections: the Bird Control Seminar Proceedings, Bird Strike Proceedings, Canadian Cooperative Wildlife Health Center Newsletter and Publications, the Eastern Pine and Meadow Vole Symposia, which those of you who really want to learn a lot more about voles, particularly meadow vole and pine vole, now called woodland vole, I think, and you'd want to get into that material. You also get some Great Plains Wildlife Damage Control Workshop Proceedings, and then you have the Internet Center for Wildlife Damage Management image collections, Sheep and Goat Research Journal that's often useful for learning how to handle carnivores attacking livestock. We have the Handbook for the Prevention and Control of Wildlife Damage. This is, many of you might be familiar with this as the Blue Book, the 2-volume Blue Book, and that's available here. Wildlife Damage Management Conference Proceedings, and then, of course, the Wildlife Management Institute Outdoor News Bulletin. You say, Stephen, I don't have time to go through all of these documents. I just need to get information quick. Well, here's what you would do is you would type in a keyword here, and I'm just going to type in my name, Vantassel, and let's see how many articles come up here. Here's how to use resources available on the Internet Center for Wildlife Damage Management website. Here's some regulated commercial harvest to manage overabundant white-tailed deer. These are all articles where I am an author or I am cited somewhere within the paper. Of course, Vantassel. There are other Vantassels in the world, but you can see you'll see my name in various publications here. Here's one: Should Trapping Have a Place in a Christian Environmental Ethic? It's a publication I published as well. And you can see there's a lot of information here. And let's take another particular source, and let's go with, we like coyotes, so let's look under coyotes. And see what comes up. Here we have different publications on coyotes. So it is a very easy to use. There is no additional cost for this. It's held by the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and you can download these PDFs and use this if you're looking for sometimes some rather obscure things in wildlife control. This might be a place to check out if you're looking for training materials for yourself or for your staff. These would also be useful for you. And again, if you're going to do something different, you've got to read and learn different. So if you're just simply relying, I need to find out what's going to work for me right now, it's very hard for me to explain sometimes the value of of education for people at times, because we become such a Google-oriented world where we think answers are always just a fingertip away. And I'm sorry, it's not always that easy. Sometimes you have to read things to get context and to get a different perspective. You're not going to get that with just a simple Google question search. And if you're not exposing yourself to alternative information and something that's going to stretch you, you're just going to be in a rut. And that's just all there is. That's all there is to it. But again, the Wildlife Internet Center for Wildlife Damage Management, it's available here at the Digital Commons at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. That is our first site here. So definitely something worthwhile. The next one is the Vertebrate Pest Conference. Now, the Vertebrate Pest Conference is the longest running and oldest conference dedicated exclusively to the management of vertebrate pests. Started in, I believe, the early 1960s. It may have been the late 1950s. It's usually held in California, and this coming year in 2022, it'll be held in Reno, Nevada. I think they're trying to get out of California because of all the restrictions that wackadoo California is involved with. Unfortunately, I pity the people that suffer under the prejudices there. But in any event, it's being held in Nevada this coming year, and if it's going to be something, if you deal with more agricultural or large landscape areas, this is a conference that you may be interested in. It tends to be obviously Western focused as well. However, they do have a lot of attendees who are in the Pacific Rim, things like Australia, New Zealand, I think we've had people from Japan attend as well. So it has a rather international flair, and of course Hawaii would be in that Pacific Rim as well. So it deals a lot with invasive species, toxicant use in wildlife control. So if you're just someone who always deals with the Northeast in a structural situation, you're probably not going to get a lot out of the Vertebrate Pest Conference. However, if you're maybe out in the Midwest and you're doing a mix of agriculture or large landscape control and as well as structural, you'll find find some things worthwhile. Again, you will be stretched by the information you're obtaining. Plus, you're exposed to some leading experts on various wildlife control issues around the world. So, but these are the proceedings, these are the publications. So the idea is you go and present your research or what you've done in the field of wildlife control at the conference, and then as part of your responsibility is that you submit a paper summarizing and including the information that you gave in your presentation, also providing a lot more detail. I've done it on several occasions, and so these are then published in the proceedings of the conference. And so they go back, it publishes every other year, and it goes back decades. So there's a huge volume of information here, and some of it is quite useful for research. So you don't have to attend necessarily to take advantage of this. You just go to the escholarship.org website and look under the Vertebrate Pest Conference, and then you have all access. Notice we have volume 29 is the last one that was done 2 years ago, just at the beginning of the pandemic. We were able to get our conference in before everything being shut down, and you can do a little search here. So I'm going to do a search here again on my name. Hey, it's my show. I can do it. Here's an article I wrote, Temperature and Humidity Variation Between Caged and Plastic Walled Traps, Implications for Animal Welfare. So if you want to think, this is my argument of why caged and box traps aren't necessarily humane, this is part of my research where I was able to basically take two different traps, I put a temperature sensor and humidity sensor inside, and left them in my backyard for a year. And then it was able to collect data on this, and I was able to show how the box trap was warmer in the wintertime and hotter in the summertime. And the cage trap, of course, was cooler in the summertime and colder in the wintertime. And so how that impacts, of course, animal welfare. And, it's pretty obvious. The idea I got from Rob Erickson, who talked about how skunks were getting cooked inside these box traps during the summer. And I said, well, let's check it out. And it certainly made a lot of sense to me. But now we have the proof that the anecdotal information that was coming from the wildlife control community now has scientific evidence to support it. Now, I didn't have duplication and repetition. However, we now had, you could call my work there as a pilot study, but if someone wanted to take that pilot study and expand it, the information's all there. You just simply kind of repeat it, then do multiple sessions of it, and it should prove itself forward. I think there's no real shock. This is not earth-shaking information. It gave us information back that we were expecting. Okay. Nevertheless, there's a ton of information on here. Let's do another search on coyote, for instance, like coyotes. And here we have coyote attacks again, coyotes and humans, can we coexist? This is from an animal rights activist here. Management of conflicts between urban coyotes and humans in Southern California. Here you have some case studies and information. How do we help people resolve some of these issues? Behavioral effects of removal of coyote pups from dens. Does that change the behavior of the parents, for example? And then there's a website, Coyote Bites, that talks about, coyote attacks and then talks about baits and attractants for vets. And notice how many pages. There's 282 of these, all right? There's a lot of information about coyotes, all right? So this should be no big surprise here, okay? So that means a coyote was somewhere in these words, which is why we went out that far. But let's kind of go back here to 279. So there must be coyotes. So you can get a lot of information here, so you may have to learn how to use these searches a little bit better. But anyways, here's a clod to deliver pentachlorobenzene to coyotes, all right? Urban coyote, another approach to the problem. This is done by Robert Erickson. He did that in 2010, so he gave a presentation. Weight and ages of coyotes captured in Virginia, all right? So, again, check it out. 29 volumes of information, and they typically are a couple of hundred pages, sometimes over 300 pages long. All of these documents are available in PDF form, and there is no additional charge. Again, I don't say it's free because it's someone's paying for it. There's just no additional charge for you. And that's the Vertebrate Pest Conference proceedings. All right, let's go to number 3. This one, I think, was familiar with it on a remote basis. However, it has a little bit of an international flair, and I thought, well, this is kind of interesting, so let me list it here. It kind of came up. This is a rather interesting website here. So we did this one. Here's the Vertebrate Pest Conference. Now we're in 3. This is the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. And let's go back to our web page here. And so it's asking you again about cookies, of course, and so we're just going to accept that. And so we're going to look here at our library. Now, this has an international flair to it, and so you're going to get information on an international basis. So let's check out the library. It talks about policies, and again, key species. This is an organization dedicated to protecting nature, and part of the way you protect nature is you help people resolve conflicts with wildlife, because if conflicts with wildlife continue, people get mad and they just kill the wildlife. When you're a poor farmer and your livelihood is based on getting a subsistence crop and an elephant comes through and tramples it on, you could starve. And so you don't care if the African elephant is endangered or not. It doesn't matter to you because you're going to be endangered if you don't eat. And so this is the kind of conflicts that they resolve. You say, well, Stephen, this really isn't that helpful for me. Well, this is why, again, you're looking outside of the box here a little bit. Now, notice what we have. It has information on bears. We have bears in America. Now, you may not be involved in controlling bears, but again, are you looking forward to new potential markets? And our industry is changing, and sooner or later, many of our wildlife agencies are going to have to come to grips with the fact that the private sector is going to need to be assisting in resolving some of these conflicts. Okay, so are you being prepared for that? Okay. Electric fences. Do you want to learn about electric fences? And what better way to see how things are used elsewhere? And here's various papers. Some of them are going to be available for you, and some of them are not. But at least you'll be able to find access and maybe go to a local university and find these publications. And then, of course, we can look here into raptors. Perhaps you're dealing with raptor issues and you want to get a different perspective on raptor management. And so here are some papers that are going to give you some information on that. So this is going to be some high level information, kind of vetted by people who are really passionate about protecting wildlife and resolving these conflicts with people. Talk issues of translocation. Again, you don't have to live in Africa to be interested in articles about translocation, because sometimes the experience elsewhere can be informative for the kind of experiences we're having here in the United States. And of course, we have wolf. We have wolves in the United States. Again, not many of them, but we do have them in various states. You have Michigan, Wisconsin, I believe Minnesota may have some wolves. We certainly have wolves here in Montana. We have them in Wyoming. I believe they've just entered Colorado, and I think they found one in Washington or Oregon, and maybe even Northern California, and of course Idaho as well. So those of you who have to encounter some of these, you have to find resources that are going to be able to help you resolve some of those, because there are going to be some less lethal issues and methods that you can provide people, even if you're not allowed by your state or agency to lethally control them. Okay, that's enough of that one. So let's move on to our next entry. So let's go down to this is the USDA APHIS Wildlife Service Wildlife Damage Management Technical Series. But before I do that, I wanted to get us involved with the Prevention and Control of Wildlife Damage Info chapters. Okay, so let's pull that up. And this particular web page is where you have the blue book. Now, we've talked about this previously. Maybe I should bring you up a picture of the blue book here. So let's do that. Prevention and Control of Wildlife Damage. Do the images. Here it is. So those of you who have not seen this, this is the 1994, it's called the Bible of Wildlife Damage Management. Of course, 1994, it's very, very dated by this point. However, there are still many chapters that still have value. You'll have a chapter on porcupines and other species. So the raccoon chapter obviously is going to be kind of weak because we have a lot more tools. There's no mention of encapsulated foot traps, for example, in this manual. That was invented after this was published. Nevertheless, it is still a useful resource, although it is dated. And for many of the more obscure species, it is still valuable because there really isn't anything else to replace it. By an obscure species, I'm referring to things like magpies. Okay, that would be one bird species that there's not a lot of information on, and that's available in here. Certainly something you need to check out to be sure. So I want to encourage you to check it out. So here's the general information section. Notice all of these particular chapters. And notice how it's telling you that they're 4th edition. These are the chapters from the 4th edition. There was supposed to be a 5th edition. I was supposed to be involved in that 5th edition when I was at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I was there 10 years, and unfortunately, it never really got off the ground. It was not, it was an emotional issue for me because I was passionate about getting this revised. And unfortunately, when you're not in charge, how are you going to get it done, right? But in any event, there is still a lot of valuable information there. And of course, we can look at the bird chapter, and you can see the types of species that are here. You have pigeons and swallows and mute swans and woodpeckers and blackbirds and all this type of stuff, okay? And then you can look, of course, at the rodent section and all the rodent information that's here, cotton rats and tree squirrels and voles and wood rats and that sort of thing. And then lastly, let's get into some other mammals. jackrabbits and javelinas and bats and shrews, pronghorns. I mean, how much information do you know about pronghorns, right? How do you manage pronghorns? So if you're looking for obscure things and just sort of broaden your understanding, the Prevention Control of Wildlife Damage 4th edition, that's 1994, is a valuable resource. And again, you can download this. My encouragement would be is download all of it, get the whole book in digital form and save it on your hard drive, okay? Nothing illegal about that. It's available at no additional charge because there was government support for that. So definitely valuable. Now, the problem is, as I've said repeatedly, it is dated. That means there's a lot of, you're going to read this and you're like, oh, that's the old way of doing something. We have better ways of doing it. And that's certainly true. You're going to find better ways of doing that for many of the species. So this is where the Wildlife Damage Management Technical Series takes its place. As I said before, the 5th edition of the Prevention Control of Wildlife Damage never got off the ground. However, that being said, many authors were writing their papers, writing their chapters in preparation and the anticipation that the 5th edition would become a reality. Because we did do a lot of background work. We got topics handled. That's why you saw on that list there were some things that were 4th edition. Then you saw, well, what are those other names there? That's because we expanded the list of species. The 5th edition was supposed to be a complete revision. We were not only going to revise all of the previous chapters that were published, we were going to have additional species and topics that were not covered in the 4th edition. It was a monumental project, and it was going to be awesome. So when we contacted various authors, some of them started to work on the publication because, again, this was going on for, while I was there, 10 years, and it was supposed to have been worked on prior to my arrival at the University of Nebraska. So to make a long story short, many of these authors developed papers, and then, of course, when the 5th edition was basically canceled, for lack of a better word, because the editors didn't get it going, the USDA offered this particular opportunity to get those papers published that were originally supposed to be in the 5th volume. I hope you caught all that. There's a lot going on there, okay? So I was one of the authors who was writing things. I had chapters written and drafted before this all collapsed. And when I heard that it was not going to be a reality, I heard about this technical series, and I published my papers through there. So this is what we have. Notice we have all these birds that have been, these are brand new chapters. They've been published in the last few years. So this information is up to date. How many of you handle American white pelicans, for instance? I don't, but those of you on coastal areas may have clients with issues with white pelicans. European starlings, they're pretty much nationwide. That's going to be valuable information. How about hawks and owls and gulls and mute swans and sandhill and whooping cranes? Vultures, this is becoming a big issue. Wild turkeys and etc. And how about the mammals? Well, we have chapters on beavers and black bears and coyotes and feral swine and free-ranging and feral cats. That's my latest publication. Gray wolves and muskrats. Again, not a lot, However, these are at least species that have been updated from the 4th edition. And then, of course, we have the other category. This was going to be the introductory section. These are more broad-ranging topics on a variety of areas in wildlife damage management, such as information resources. And that was one of my first publications. You can pull this up, and it goes through the whole litany of publications that are available on wildlife damage management. If you're looking for a one-stop resource of where you can find information that you can look up, this is a document for you. Definitely check it out. And of course, it's always going to need to be updated, but it was published 2019. Okay, so definitely worth your while. Wildlife at airports, safety. If you want to do a safety training for your company, this talks about the various aspects of safety and wildlife control, because let's face it, folks, what you're doing is dangerous. All right. And then, of course, wildlife translocation and then wildlife carcass disposal. Do you need information on wildlife carcass disposal? Well, this is a publication that will certainly help you look at your options on how to do carcass disposal. And this is one of the other articles I was involved with as well. So again, all available at no additional cost. Why? It's because it's your tax dollars at work, folks. Notice I don't say it's free. Whenever you hear a politician tell you something is free, you know they're lying to you, and make sure you don't trust them. Nothing the government does is free. It's one of my favorite hobby horses because I'm amazed at how many Americans think that stuff is free. That's done by the government. It's absolutely stupid. Okay, it's not free. It's just already been paid for by your taxes. So you don't have to pay for it again, and this is available for you. And I'm hopeful that we're going to have other articles come out in this. I don't think you're going to see a lot more per se. However, you might want to just check back from time to time, and you might see a new paper being published here. And who knows, maybe the 5th edition will be resurrected. I would certainly love to be a part of it if such a thing occurs. But if you have a lot of money and want to get this done, I'm sure the USDA Wildlife Services would love to talk to you about getting the 5th edition up and running. And we'd love to hear from you. So definitely check that out. All right, so that's our 4th area. We talked about the prevention control of wildlife damage, as well as the Wildlife Damage Management Technical Series, which is the updated version of the prevention control of wildlife damage. Well, that's pretty much it for our time today. We're going to stop there at point 4, and we'll just sort of continue this on in the next episode. Hey, we're really glad to have you on board here. And again, let me remind you that we'd love to hear from you. You can send comments and thoughts and suggestions and criticisms, yes, about the show at wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com, wildlifecontrolconsultant@gmail.com. Do take a few moments and subscribe to our channel and make sure you come back frequently. I publish once a week, and so you're not going to get inundated by me. I also have material up on Rumble. You can check me out there at the Wildlife Control Consultant page at Rumble. Again, we'd love to have you visit and subscribe to that channel as well. You can, and again, hope you're having a good time here. Do take the opportunity to prepare for this coming year, and I hope you have a blessed and prosperous and safe and healthy new year. And again, this is Living the Wildlife. Why? We want you to live the wildlife, not be the wildlife. Take care, everyone.